The ocean glows pewter under the early light, a broad silver sheet stretching to the horizon. Low clouds hang in layered bands, their edges tinged faint orange where the sun tries to push through. The swell is long and slow, lifting the surface in gentle arcs that slide under the hull of a small research boat drifting alone far off the Pacific Northwest coast. The water looks calm, not safe exactly, but undisturbed. A flock of murres moves like a dark smear over the waves, wings skimming so close that feathers nearly trace the surface. Kelp bulbs bob in lazy clusters. The coastline is a faint, jagged line far behind, blue and gray and distant. On deck, a marine biologist named Aaron Park leans over the rail and squints at a disturbance half a mile away. A patch of water where the texture changes, where the surface is broken again and again by tall black triangles cutting upward, slicing clean lines through the swell. Fins, too many to belong to a single animal, too close together to be a casual pass. Erin's fingers tighten against the metal. Her eyes narrow. Something is happening out there, something coordinated. She can see one massive back rolling just beneath the chaos, mottled gray and white, bigger than the rest, slower. A whale. And around it, those tall, dark fins keep circling, closing in, pivoting like blades. You and I are out here with her now, far from land, watching the water change color around a desperate animal. If you want to see how a pod of orcas turned a shark attack into one of the strangest rescues ever caught on camera, stay with this story. And if you like real ocean mysteries and the way wild animals rewrite the rules, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because this is not a children's story about cute whales playing hero. This is about strategy, risk, violence, and a choice that left even hardened field researchers wondering what, exactly, they had just witnessed. Erin had been at sea for 6 days before she saw the first sign of trouble. She worked for a small nonprofit out of Seattle, a lean outfit tracking humpback and gray whale migrations along the outer coast. Their boat, the Kestrel, was old but dependable, with enough bunk space for 4 researchers and a deck just big enough to hold equipment crates and a small dinghy. No one on board was there for the money. They were there because the ocean had wrapped itself around their lives and refused to let go. On that particular trip, the focus was humpbacks, tagging, photo ID, biopsy sampling. Long days spent staring at endless water, waiting for the distant plume of a blow, the gentle arch of a back, the slight kink of a fluke disappearing beneath the surface. By day 6, fatigue and salt had settled into everything. Clothes, hair, muscles. Erin's notebook held pages of numbers, coordinates, sighting times, behavior codes. The kind of data most people would find mind-numbing. Then, just after sunrise, she noticed the shift. They were positioned near a deep offshore trench where cold, nutrient-rich currents rose from the seafloor, pulling krill and small schooling fish toward the surface. Humpbacks loved this spot. So did sharks. Erin was taking a slow scan with binoculars, letting her eyes travel lazily across the horizon, when a flurry of splashes caught her attention. At first, she assumed it was a temporary feeding frenzy. A bait ball, maybe. Dolphins corralling fish. But the pattern was wrong. The splashes were clustered tightly around one central shape. Each splash was sharp and vertical, sending narrow columns of white spray into the air. The water near that cluster had a strange color to it, a faint rust tint like diluted paint. She adjusted the focus. That was when she saw the whale. It was a humpback, big and battle-scarred, its dark back breaking the surface in short, frantic intervals. It never rose fully, never pulled its fluke clear. It just twisted and rolled, pectoral fins flashing white as it flailed. Around it, sleek dark bodies cut tight circles, smaller than the humpback, but fast and determined. The trailing edges of their tails were jagged. Their dorsal fins were low and broad. Their bodies had that unmistakable rough texture along the flanks. Sharks, at least 4, maybe 5. She could see one rise just under the surface, jaws clamped on the whale's flank as it tore away, leaving a smear of darker color in the water. Shark predation on large whales is rare, but not unheard of, Aaron would say later, sitting in front of a camera months after the event. We know it happens. We've seen scars. But to watch it unfold in front of you is a different thing. You feel small. You feel like you're looking in on something you shouldn't see. At the time, there was no narration, no careful scientific language, just adrenaline and a sick, twisting feeling in her stomach. She called for the captain. The Kestrel's engines throttled gently and turned in the direction of the disturbance, keeping a respectful distance, but moving closer. Regulations were clear. They were not to intervene. Wild predation events were to be observed, not altered. That was the rule. But rules are easier to follow when you are not watching a whale fight for its life. As they approached, the scale of the scene snapped into focus. The humpback was bleeding from at least 2 major wounds, long vertical gashes along the flank and near the tailstock. Each time the whale rolled, the injuries opened in ugly flashes of deep red against white flesh. One pectoral fin moved in jerky, uncoordinated arcs. The other barely moved at all. The sharks worked with methodical precision. 2 of them peeled off to the rear, targeting the tail area. Another bit high on the flank, then let go, then bit again. They were testing, weakening, wearing the bigger animal down. The whale tried to dive, but the shark stayed with it. Its movements were growing slower, less coordinated. Years of muscle and migratory memory sliding toward a brutal ending. Aaron stood frozen at the rail. "We can't do anything," she said under her breath, as if trying to convince herself. "We can't interfere. We're not allowed." The captain, a quiet man named Luis, didn't answer. His jaw was set tight, hands firm on the wheel. They watched. And then they noticed the fins. Not shark fins. Different shape. Taller. Straighter. Off to the left of the chaos, maybe a quarter mile away, a second group of dorsal fins had appeared, cutting through the swell in a tight formation. Black and white bodies arced just beneath the surface. Sharp contrast flashes. Smooth, powerful backs. Orcas. Aaron blinked hard. "Are you seeing this?" Luis gave a short nod. "Residents?" he asked. "Too far offshore," she said. "Could be transients. Bigs. They hunt marine mammals." She lifted the binoculars again, hand not entirely steady. 6 orcas, moving in a loose but purposeful line. One enormous male with a dorsal fin like a piece of vertical steel. 2 adult females flanking him. 3 smaller animals trailing behind, likely adolescents. They were heading straight toward the shark-whale encounter. Her pulse climbed. In most parts of the world, orcas are apex predators. They will go after seals, sea lions, porpoises, even large whales under the right conditions. Sometimes they cooperate with sharks, targeting the same prey fields at different depths. Sometimes they compete. There are scattered reports of orcas attacking great whites, driving them from prime hunting grounds. But orcas helping a wounded whale, that was not something Aaron had ever seen in a field report. She adjusted the focus again until the orcas filled her view. Their approach was not chaotic. It was controlled. The big male she tagged him as the likely matriarch's son, based on size and position, held a steady line. The females angled slightly outward. The adolescents shifted behind them like a second wave. They weren't just passing by. They were converging. The sharks seemed to sense the shift before Aaron fully processed it. Their tight circles loosened. 2 of them dropped deeper into the water, disappearing from view. Another moved away from the bleeding whale and arced outward, as if deciding whether this new development was worth the risk. The humpback floated shallow now, sides heaving, tail barely moving. Its white pectoral fin hung motionless, half submerged, like a flag that had slipped from someone's grasp. The Orcas closed the distance. The big male surfaced first near the outskirts of the kill zone, his tall fin carving a clean line in the water. One of the females surfaced beside him, smaller, but no less imposing. Their blows rose in quick bursts, then vanished in the cool morning air. They did not rush in. They slowed. They assessed. They were calculating, Erin would say later. You could see it. There's a body language to Orcas. When they're curious, they move a certain way. When they're hunting, it's different. This was neither. This was evaluation. The adolescent Orcas hung back at first, staying closer to one female. Their smaller fins rose and fell in shorter intervals, mirroring adult movements like shadows. The sharks regrouped. 3 of them took up positions again around the humpback, though their circles widened, their angles more cautious. The 4th stayed deeper, its outline barely visible as a darker blur under the surface. The Orcas began to spread out, forming a loose ring several dozen yards away from the whale. From above, it would have looked like 2 halos of motion, the inner ring of sharks circling tightly around their prey, and a larger, more distant ring of Orcas surrounding them all. The kestrel drifted just outside that wider circle. Erin's hands shook as she lifted her notebook and began scribbling timestamps. 9:17 First Orcas arrive. 6 individuals. Adult male, 2 adult females, 3 subadults. Position relative to humpback, 200 meters, closing. She stopped writing. On the water, the circle tightened. One of the adult females broke rank and cut inward. She moved with a kind of measured power, not at full speed, but not cruising either. A shark angled toward her, then veered off before making contact. The female rolled slightly as she passed, exposing her white underside briefly, then righted herself. She wasn't attacking. She was testing. The big male followed, slotting into position directly between the humpback and 2 of the circling sharks. At his full length, easily 25 feet, he was smaller than the humpback, but larger than the sharks harassing it. He held position like a wall. One of the sharks tried to slip between him and the whale. He turned just enough that his flank blocked the path, forcing the shark to adjust course. It looked like a body check, Erin said later. Not a full hit. Just enough to say, not that way. The sharks responded with what passed for caution in their world. They widened their circles again. The humpback floated slightly higher in the water now, as if the small reprieve had given it a moment to gather itself. Its tail flicked weakly. Blood still seeped from open wounds, but the tempo of the feeding attack had slowed. The second adult female moved to the whale's other side. The Orcas had effectively flanked it, forming a living barrier between the sharks and their prey. Erin felt her throat tighten. On the deck, the rest of the Kestrel's crew had joined her, watching in stunned silence. Cameras were raised. Lenses tracked movement. No one spoke. Rules said they could not interfere with a natural predation event. The ocean, apparently, had decided to rewrite the script on its own. For several long minutes, nothing explosive happened. The sharks tested, probed. One cut closer to the humpback's tail and tried to dart in. The big male orca shifted and swung his tail in a short, powerful flick that forced the shark to dive. It was deterrence, not attack. You expect apex predators to take advantage of a vulnerable animal, Erin would say. If anything, you expect them to join the sharks and finish the job. Instead, they positioned their bodies to keep the sharks away. That's not random. That's decision-making. The adolescents edged closer, staying behind the adults, but no longer hanging back as far. One small orca surfaced near the humpback's head, its white eye patch angled toward the injured whale. The humpback moved that massive head in a slow arc. For a heartbeat, the two animals were side by side at the surface, black and white and gray, predator and prey, species that normally exist on opposite sides of a food chain. Up on the research boat, Erin held her breath without realizing she'd stopped breathing. Then something shifted again. Far to the right, near the outer ring of Orcas, a new disturbance broke the surface. A shark, larger than the others, arced through the water in a bold line, heading straight for the gap between the big male orca and the humpback's bleeding flank. This shark wasn't testing. It was committing. The big male reacted instantly. He lunged forward in a burst of acceleration that slammed his body sideways into the shark's trajectory. The impact sent a wide sheet of water arcing into the air. The shark rolled, its pale belly flashing briefly before it twisted back. This time, the orca did not simply block. He followed through. His jaws opened, clamping down around the shark's midsection. For an instant, everything seemed to hold still, as if the ocean itself were braced. Then the shark went limp. The big male released the carcass, which began to sink slowly, its body twisted unnaturally. The remaining sharks scattered. They broke formation and dropped deeper, sliding out and away from the sudden shift in power. The water around the humpback cleared of their dark shapes, leaving only the faint swirling trace of blood behind. The Orcas regrouped. The big male returned to his position near the humpback's tail. The females adjusted their places at its sides. The adolescents moved farther out, splitting their attention between the retreating sharks and the injured whale. The entire character of the scene had transformed. What began as a coordinated shark predation now looked like something else altogether. A perimeter. A guard. A rescue that no one on board, the Kestrel, could have predicted. Erin stared, barely aware that her hands were trembling against the rail. Whatever this was, it was not simple predation anymore. It was something messier, stranger, something that would send her back to shore with hard drives full of footage and a question she would spend months trying to answer. Why did the Orcas step in? The swell flattens slowly as the morning wears on, the stormless sky stretching pale and wide above the ocean. The chaotic violence of the shark attack has faded into a strange hush, as if the water itself is trying to recover from what it just witnessed. Spray softens, ripples smooth. Even the air feels heavier, loaded with something that doesn't quite fit into any standard field notes. The Kestrel drifts in neutral, no engine noise, no conversation. Just the sound of salt water lapping at its hull, and the occasional rustle of clothing as one of the researchers shifts position, unable to keep still, but unsure what movement is appropriate. Out near the wounded humpback, the Orcas remain in their formation. They haven't attacked the whale. They haven't left it. They haven't resumed traveling. Their bodies move in slow, deliberate passes, rising and sinking in carefully measured arcs. Erin watches the scene with an intensity that pulls her forward until her chest nearly presses against the rail. She can't shake the feeling that she is watching something that doesn't belong to humans, something ancient, encoded deep into a kind of intelligence we aren't fully equipped to interpret. Her pencil hovers over the notebook. 10:03 a.m. Orcas still present. Humpback alive but weakened. No shark activity observed last 15 minutes. She stops writing, realizing the data doesn't capture it at all. Whatever is unfolding out, there is the type of event researchers spend their careers chasing and almost never catch. A behavioral anomaly so sharp and clear that it forces a reevaluation of assumptions. The humpback drifts slightly, held afloat by sheer instinct. The great, scarred body rises sluggishly, falls, rises again. Its flukes barely move. Its blow comes in shorter, tighter exhales, the sound more like a wheeze than the powerful plume Erin is used to hearing from a healthy adult. One of the adult females approaches the whale again. This time she dives beneath it, her white underside glowing faintly in the filtered sunlight. She moves slowly, almost gingerly, holding her position under the humpback's belly. Erin watches, confused at first. Then she sees it. The orca is lifting the whale. Not much. Not enough to make a bystander think it's doing anything more than passing beneath. But Erin's trained eye catches the subtle change, the humpback's body rising just a few inches higher than it had moments before, buoyed not by its own strength, but by the orca's. The female holds that position for a full 15 seconds before drifting out from beneath the whale and surfacing again. When she breathes, it's controlled. No sign of distress or exhaustion. "She's supporting it," Erin whispers. Luis hears it from the wheelhouse doorway and steps closer, squinting into the distance. "That what it looks like?" Erin nods, eyes wide. Like she's helping it stay afloat. One of the younger orcas mimics the movement, dipping under the whale, not as precisely, not as effectively, but with clear intention, rising beneath the massive humpback and boosting it slightly before drifting back. Practice behavior. Learning. The adolescent retreats to the safety of the outer perimeter after the attempt, its dorsal fin slicing neatly beside one of the other youngsters. "This isn't random," Erin murmurs. Luis exhales through his nose. Nothing that's happened in the last half hour has been random. The big male orca surfaces again, a deep, powerful rise that leaves a broad slick of displaced water behind him. He passes alongside the humpback, close enough that their bodies nearly touch, then dives. For a moment he's gone. Then a shadow forms below the whale broad, unmistakable. The male rises vertically beneath the humpback, pushing it from below with steady force. The humpback's monstrous body lifts another foot toward the surface enough to draw a deeper, fuller breath before gravity pulls it back down again. Erin grips the rail. "He's teaching them," she says softly. "He's showing the juveniles how to do it." Teaching behavior among orcas isn't rare. Mothers teach calves to hunt seals on ice floes. Pods teach coordinated wave washing. Transients teach their young how to isolate porpoises before striking. But teaching support behavior, teaching rescue, that is something else entirely. The humpback attempts a fluke stroke, a sluggish, uneven motion that collapses halfway through. Its tail sinks deeper than before. The big male circles around and nudges upward again. The juveniles watch. One swims a little closer this time. Another mimics the arc of the male's dive. Erin feels her pulse race. She lifts the binoculars to her eyes again and zooms in until she can see details in the humpback's scars. Deep curved rake marks, a sign that this whale had survived orca attacks before, possibly multiple times. More scars along the dorsal ridge, old and pale. Several new gashes from the sharks. This whale is a veteran of predation. But this time, the orcas had become something else entirely. By noon, the researchers have watched the orcas support the humpback at least 9 separate times. Each pass is intentional, measured, coordinated. Sometimes only an adult performs the lift. Other times, an adolescent attempts it awkwardly, pushing from the wrong angle or diving too quickly. The adults correct them. They guide. They direct. Luis furrows his brow. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" Erin nods. They're not rescuing the whale. They're teaching rescue. She hears how absurd it sounds. She reaches for the logic she knows, the science that grounds her, the models of killer whale behavior, the predator-prey dynamics, the hard rules of marine ecology. None of it explains this. She steadies her voice. "We need every second of this on video. The crew already has 3 cameras rolling nonstop, 2 long-lens rigs on tripods, 1 handheld for wide shots. The hydrophones capture bursts of clicks, low-frequency rumbles, and occasional sharp whistles. The soundscape is complex, layered, alive. The orcas break formation briefly. One of the adult females swims away from the humpback and surfaces farther out. Her blow is sharp, her posture more upright. She stays there for several seconds, scanning. keeping lookout, Erin says. For sharks? Asks one of the younger researchers. Or for something else. But even as she says it, the water answers. A shark fin emerges again. Then another. 2 of the remaining sharks circle back toward the humpback, slow at first, then faster as they assess the orca positions. They've waited, regrouped. The blood trail is still fresh. The whale is still vulnerable. One shark makes an approach at a shallow angle, targeting the rear flank. The female who had been acting as lookout reacts instantly, diving toward the shark's path. She doesn't strike. She doesn't ram. She simply puts herself between the predator and the humpback. The shark veers away. Again, not random, not chance. The sharks regroup. The orcas shift. The big male rises high in a half-breach, slamming his body down in a powerful displacement of water. The shockwave ripples outward, unsettling the shark's approach pattern. The crew on the kestrel gasps at the scale of it. Erin's heart kicks hard against her ribs. The shark nearest the disturbance drops suddenly, spiraling down in a retreating arc. Erin murmurs, "They're not attacking unless they have to. They're just holding the perimeter." The second shark tries a different tactic coming from below at a sharp angle, hoping to exploit the humpback's slowness. An adolescent orca intercepts. It's a risky move. The young whale swings in too quickly and overshoots the shark's path. The shark reacts with a sudden twist, jaws snapping shut around empty water, but close enough that Erin flinches. Before the shark can correct its motion, one of the adults arrives, slamming her tail in a clean, precise strike, not a blow hard enough to kill, but enough to send the shark reeling away. Teaching through intervention. Correcting the juvenile's mistakes. Louise mutters, "They're running drills." Erin doesn't argue. The scene unfolds again and again. Sharks attempting. Orcas blocking. Adults demonstrating tactics. Juveniles trying and failing, and trying again. And always, always, the humpback remains the center of the circle. After nearly 2 hours, the sharks finally abandon the area entirely. Their fins vanish in the distance, dissolving into the deeper water. The orcas tighten their formation again. Not aggressively, protectively. The humpback's breaths come slower but steadier. The great whale seems to draw from some hidden reserve, faint, fragile, but real. The big male moves beneath it again, lifts, supports. The females flank it. The juveniles take turns moving in close, watching the whale's body language, imitating the positioning of the adults. At one point, a young orca swims directly in front of the humpback's head, pausing inches from its rostrum. The whale opens its mouth slightly, a gesture of fatigue, or confusion, or acknowledgement. No one on the kestrel can say for certain. The young orca stays there for a long moment, then sinks slowly beneath the whale's line of sight and rejoins the group. "They're checking on it," Karen says. "Like they're assessing its ability to move." "Why?" asks one of the crew. Erin doesn't have an answer. Not a scientific one. Not one she's ready to commit to paper. By mid-afternoon, the humpback gathers enough strength to attempt a deeper dive. Its tail lifts slightly. Its massive body angles down. It sinks perhaps 10 feet before rising again, unable to hold the dive. The orcas don't push it. They don't interfere. They just watch. When the whale returns to the surface, the eldest female edges closer than before, brushing her body lightly along its flank. The movement is gentle, slow, almost tender. Erin's chest tightens. They're reassuring it. Lys gives her a skeptical look. "You sure that's not projection?" But as he watches the orca repeat the motion, this time with the juveniles observing closely, his expression shifts. Maybe it's not projection. Maybe it's something else. Something harder to categorize. By late afternoon, the humpback has regained enough energy to travel in short bursts. Its movements are uneven, but purposeful. It begins to angle toward open water, away from the site of the attack. The orcas follow, not in a hunting posture, not in a tight strike formation. Beside it, all around it, a living escort. Erin scribbles furiously in her notes. 2:42 p.m. humpback initiating travel. Pod accompanying in parallel formation. No aggression. Appears protective. The kestrel maintains distance, engines idling low. As the whale continues its slow, painful progress, the Orcas shift positions again. 2 ahead, 2 behind, 2 at the sides. When the whale slows too much, the big male rises beneath it and lifts gently. A few minutes later, the whale attempts a shallow dive and resurfaces in a jagged, disoriented arc. The Orcas wait. They drift with it. They never pressure. The light begins to change as the sun tilts lower, scattering long, warm streaks across the water. The scene looks strangely peaceful at a distance, like a migrating group rather than a rescue in progress. No one on the research boat speaks. No one wants to break the fragile balance. Eventually, the humpback reaches deeper water. The Orcas slow. The whale drifts forward on its own momentum, its breath steady but shallow. The big male surfaces one last time near the whale's tail. He exhales sharply, turns, and leaves. The others do the same. One by one, the Orcas peel away from the humpback, angling east in a smooth traveling line. Even the juveniles follow, though 2 of them linger just long enough to turn and face the humpback before resuming pursuit of the adults. The humpback floats alone again. The kestrel stays beside it, quiet, respectful. For several long minutes, the whale remains still. Then it dives. Not far, not fast, but on its own power. When it surfaces again, the blow is stronger. A weak recovery, but a recovery nonetheless. Erin feels her breath shake. The humpback continues its slow journey toward deeper, safer waters. The Orcas vanish into the distance. The horizon swallows them. Hours later, after the whale has fully disappeared from view, the kestrel crew sits below deck reviewing the footage. The air smells like salt and damp rubber and relief. What they captured should not have been possible, should not have happened. Yet it did. Erin watches the clips again and again. The teaching moments, the coordinated perimeters, the calculated restraint, the lifts, the blocking maneuvers, the escorts. There is no doubt in her mind now. This was not opportunistic feeding. This was intervention, purposeful, deliberate. And something else, a word she is careful with, a word that carries weight in scientific circles, like a stone carried in the pocket of someone who knows the tide can turn at any moment. Empathy. This pod behaved as if the suffering of another species mattered enough to take action, to risk injury, to teach the next generation how to prevent it. She closes her laptop and sits back, heart still pounding with the enormity of it. This wasn't just science. This was mystery. Not the kind you solve, the kind you carry. The footage spread faster than anyone expected. Before the kestrel even reached port, Erin had forwarded low-resolution copies to the nonprofit's internal team for preliminary review. She expected curiosity, maybe a handful of late-night emails from colleagues wanting details. What she didn't expect was the chain reaction that began before she even touched land scientists calling scientists, institutions calling institutions, whispers spreading across marine biology circles like a current too strong to fight. By the time the kestrel tied up at the dock 3 days later, there were already messages waiting for her. 12 missed calls, 4 requests for interviews, a message from a well-known behavioral ecologist wanting raw data, and 1 email that simply read, "Is the footage real?" Another, "If authenticated, this could change everything." Erin ignored most of them at first. The team was exhausted, salt-crusted, half delirious from lack of sleep. They needed rest, food, showers. They needed time to sit with what they had seen. Instead, they found themselves pulled straight from the dock to a small briefing room inside the Institute's coastal facility, where administrators and senior researchers waited with a mixture of excitement and skepticism sharpening the air. The projector flickered to life. The room fell into a kind of collective stillness. There it was again, a shark attack unfolding in tight, vicious spirals. The sudden arrival of the Orcas. The shocking moment when the big male slammed sideways into the attacking shark. No one made a sound as the Orcas formed the perimeter. No one inhaled when the female supported the humpback. No one blinked when the juveniles practiced the lift. The final escort sequence, 6 Orcas flanking an injured whale, guiding it into deeper waters, sent a ripple through the room so quiet it was almost imagined. When the clip ended, the lights hummed back to life. The head researcher, a gray-haired man with a lifetime of fieldwork behind him, removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "If this is staged," he said, "I want to shake the hand of the person who managed to choreograph 6 wild orcas and a bleeding humpback." "Not staged," Aaron said firmly. "Then we are looking at one of the most sophisticated interspecies behavioral events ever recorded." Another researcher leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We've documented protective behavior among dolphins, cooperative hunting between species, even interspecies alliances in certain conditions. But this?" She tapped the darkened screen. "Teaching rescue techniques? That's unprecedented." Someone else asked, "Could they have been preparing the whale as prey? Keeping it alive long enough to eat later?" Erin clenched her jaw, forcing herself to respond calmly. There was no rake-mark pattern consistent with orca predation. They never took advantage of its vulnerability. No tail biting, no dorsal isolation, no coordinated chase. Every action they took kept the humpback alive, not weakened. A senior behavioral modeler tilted his head. What if it wasn't empathy? What if it was strategic? An attempt to drive sharks out of a high-value feeding territory? Erin exhaled slowly. Then why continue assisting the whale after the sharks fled? Why lift it? Why escort it for nearly 2 miles? Why teach the juveniles to do the same thing? Silence. A different scientist, one who had spent decades studying Big's killer whales, spoke next. "Transients don't waste energy. Everything they do is calculated. They don't play with food. They don't test boundaries without reason. If they wanted that whale dead, it would be dead." He paused. What they did wasn't predation. And it wasn't play. He looked around the room with something close to awe. It was behavioral instruction and protective intervention. The phrase settled over the group like a weight. Protective intervention. No one knew what to do with it. Not yet. Within a week, the Institute had assembled a joint research committee, scientists from the US, Canada, Norway, and New Zealand. Experts on orcas, experts on sharks, experts on large whale behavior. The footage was analyzed frame by frame, cross-referenced with hydrophone recordings, compared to existing databases of known behaviors. Every analysis circled the same conclusion. Nothing like this had ever been documented. But science moves slowly, and nature doesn't. 2 weeks after the kestrel returned, a fishing vessel 50 miles north reported a humpback with distinctive scar patterns traveling with an unusual rhythm, slow but steady, as if recovering. Erin received the call. She stared at the description, her breath catching at the detail. Whale's left flank appears to have linear gashes consistent with shark bites. Scar length approx. 6 feet. Whale traveling alone. It was almost certainly the same whale. Alive, somehow. The news hit Erin harder than she expected. She felt a mixture of relief, disbelief, gratitude, and something else she couldn't fully explain. A sense that she had witnessed a moment where the natural order bent, however briefly, around an act of improbable intervention. But the ocean never lets one story stay simple. 3 days later, another call came in, this time from a trawler captain operating near the outer reef line. "Something unusual," he said. "You're gonna want to see this." Erin and 2 colleagues took a small inflatable boat out to meet the vessel. The captain pointed them toward a buoy line that had drifted off position. "Caught on something," he said. "Feels heavy." They pulled the line up slowly. At first, all they saw was torn kelp, then a dark shape, then another. By the time the entire mass surfaced, the researchers exchanged grim looks. A mutilated shark. Not one of the sharks from the attack scene. The size was different, but clearly a large specimen. The body bore unmistakable bite patterns. Not random tearing, not scavenging. Orca bite marks. Erin's stomach sank. Louise muttered, "Looks like the big male finished the job somewhere else." But Erin shook her head. This wasn't clean predation. This was disposal. The shark had not been consumed. It had been killed, then abandoned. Erin recorded the coordinates, logged the condition, took photos. She didn't jump to conclusions, but she couldn't shake the thought. Were the Orcas eliminating threats? She didn't share that theory publicly. Not yet, but she recorded it privately. The research community continued to dissect the original footage. Debate grew sharper. Papers were drafted, pulled apart, redrafted. Was this altruism? Empathy? Reciprocal defense? Teaching? Strategy? Cultural behavior? Something else entirely? The uncertainty electrified the field. The public, however, needed no such deliberation. When the Institute released a curated version of the footage online, carefully narrated, scientifically neutral, the video exploded. Millions of views in days. Comments flooded in. Orcas are the guardians of the ocean. Nature always balances itself. Proof that animals care more than humans. God's creatures protecting each other. Don't get too sentimental. Orcas are killers. Sharks deserved it. No animal deserves to be torn apart. Humans should learn from whales. Erin scrolled through the chaos one night, curled on her sofa, exhausted from back-to-back interviews. Every opinion, every projection, every fantasy laid over real footage of real animals behaving in ways no model predicted. She closed her laptop and leaned back. The footage wasn't about humans. And yet humans couldn't stop inserting themselves into it. A week later, the story took another turn. The U.S. Coast Guard radioed the Institute about a disabled vessel drifting near the same trench where the shark attack had occurred. They found the boat easily, its engine dead, its hull battered by waves. A storm had rolled through the night before, scattering debris across that section of coastline. The Coast Guard cutter approached. The crew expected to find an abandoned vessel. They did not expect to find a man on board. He was slumped near the stern, unconscious, severely dehydrated, hypothermic. The boat had taken on water. Most of his emergency supplies had washed away. It was unclear how long he'd been stranded. When he regained consciousness, he said something strange. Something the Coast Guard didn't know what to do with. He said he survived because he heard whales. The Coast Guard dismissed it as delirium. Erin did not. She asked for permission to interview him. The man, a hardscrabble fisherman named Wyatt Dalton, agreed after some hesitation. He was rough around the edges, sun-damaged skin, wind-chapped lips, a voice that sounded like gravel dragged across concrete. Not someone easily frightened. Not someone prone to wild stories. He sat across from Erin in a cold metal chair at the coastal station and rubbed his cracked knuckles. "I wasn't planning to be there," he said. "Engine died on me." Radio 2 drifted most of the night. Waves kept knocking the boat around. Couldn't see a damn thing. He swallowed. When the storm hit, I thought I was done. Erin kept her voice gentle. "What happened next?" Wyatt stared at his hands. "Something hit the boat. Debris?" she asked. He shook his head. Felt different. Like something big passed under me. Water lifted real slow, not like a wave. Like something was pushing the hull up from below. Erin's heartbeat quickened. And then Wyatt looked up, eyes raw with something between fear and reverence. I heard them. The whales? He nodded. One of them came up right next to me. Biggest fin I've ever seen. Black as night. Tall as a damn telephone pole. An adult male, Aaron whispered. I don't know what it was, Wyatt said, but it didn't leave. It stayed there, right beside me. Every time a wave hit, the boat rocked toward it, but somehow, I don't know how to say it, it didn't let me flip. Aaron leaned forward. Are you saying the whale was stabilizing your vessel? Wyatt's jaw tightened. Seems crazy, doesn't it? What happened after? He swallowed again. I blacked out. Next thing I knew, the Coast Guard was hauling me out. Aaron inhaled sharply. Wyatt rubbed his eyes with the heel of his palm. They said no whales were around when they found me. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Aaron considered him for a long moment. Mr. Dalton, I need to ask something difficult. He nodded warily. Before your engine failed, did you see anything unusual? Sharks? A whale in distress? He hesitated, looked down, then nodded once. I saw a humpback, all torn up, blood in the water. Sharks going at it. He paused. Then the Orcas came. Aaron's breath caught. You saw the same event we filmed. He nodded again. Didn't know what I was looking at. Orcas pushing sharks around, driving them off. Then I watched them lift the whale. I thought they were going to drown it at first, but no, they were trying to help it. The room felt suddenly too small, too bright, too heavy. Wyatt continued. I left as soon as I could. Didn't want to be out there with all that blood in the water. Bad luck. Should have been safe after that, but he shook his head. Storm took me. Aaron's voice softened. And you believe the Orcas came back for you? I don't know what I believe, he said, voice rough. All I know is something held that boat steady when the waves tried to kill me. He looked up with eyes steady and haunted. And it wasn't luck. When Aaron left the interview room, her hands were trembling, not from fear, something deeper. A kind of awe she rarely allowed herself to feel. Coincidence? Possible. Coincidences happen every day at sea. But this coincidence felt orchestrated. Weeks passed. More footage was analyzed. More debate erupted. The Institute prepared a formal publication for peer review. Aaron became a reluctant minor celebrity among whale enthusiasts and documentary producers who smelled a story. But she didn't care about fame. She cared about the truth. And the ocean wasn't finished revealing it. One afternoon, after a long stretch of stormy weather that kept field crews docked, Aaron received a call from a local whale-watching captain. You'll want to see this, he said. Pod of transients heading north, big male, 2 females, 3 juveniles, just like your footage. Her heart pounded. Are they hunting? No, they're escorting. Escorting what? A humpback. Aaron went cold. What condition is the whale in? She asked. Hard to tell, the captain said. It's not moving fast, but the Orcas, they're in formation. Same kind of pattern you documented. Aaron grabbed her gear, ran to the dock, and boarded the nearest research vessel. 2 hours later, they found the pod. 6 Orcas, the same 6, moving with the same slow, deliberate pattern positions, shifting with practiced ease. And there, in the center, was a humpback. Not the same one. Smaller, younger, no shark wounds, no visible distress. The Orcas weren't rescuing this whale. They were escorting it during routine travel, teaching the juveniles formation moves, support tactics, positioning techniques. Training, Aaron whispered. The realization hit her like a wave. They weren't responding to a one-time event. They were adding a new strategy to their culture, a learned behavior, a social teaching, a generational transmission. And she had seen the moment it began. As she watched the pod slip northward, Cutting clean lines through the fading afternoon light, she felt something shift inside her, something humbling, something unsettling. Humans believed they were the only species who shaped the world through teaching, through cultural memory, through moral codes and choices. But out here, in the wide, wild stretch of the Pacific, another species was rewriting the rules. Not for us, for themselves. And we were only now learning how much they knew and how much they decided to share. The sea had always been a kind of living memory, storing everything in its shifting depths currents. Migrations, shipwrecks, storms, stories whispered along coastlines. But in the months that followed the orca shark humpback encounter, the ocean felt changed somehow, as if something had been added to that memory. A new pattern, a new precedent. A new thread of behavior woven quietly into a culture that had existed long before humans ever set foot on these shores. For Erin, the shift became a daily presence. Sometimes it arrived as an early morning call from a whale-watching captain reporting unusual orca formations. Sometimes as a hydrophone recording containing patterns no algorithm could categorize. Sometimes as a single email from a researcher halfway around the world, asking the same question everyone now asked. What does it mean when apex predators choose to protect the vulnerable? By the time winter storms began sweeping relentlessly across the Pacific, Erin had been pulled into a whirlwind of conferences, symposiums, Zoom interviews, and cross-continental collaborations. She'd shown the footage to rooms full of scientists who argued over interpretation until their voices frayed. She'd presented at community meetings where fishermen leaned forward, brows furrowed, struggling to fit the story into their understanding of the animals that hunted the same waters they worked. She'd spoken to documentary filmmakers who wanted exclusive access and journalists who wanted a sound bite that would go viral. She declined almost all media requests, not because she didn't want the story told, but because she didn't want it flattened. This wasn't a feel-good novelty clip of whale saving another whale. It wasn't nature choosing sides or adopting humans' moral categories. It was behavior, real, measurable, complicated behavior. And it meant something whether humans understood it or not. Still, the pressure to interpret grew. The world wanted answers, and the ocean kept offering mysteries instead. In early January, after a series of violent storms that battered the coast for nearly 10 days straight, Erin received another call from the same whale-watching captain who had alerted her to the escort formation weeks earlier. "You're going to want to see this one," he said. She was already grabbing her coat when she asked, "Same pod? Looks like it. But they're doing something different today." "What's different?" "They're pushing something." Erin froze mid-stride. "What do you mean, pushing?" "Come see." Within an hour, Erin and a small field team were bouncing across gray-green swells on a cold research boat, breathing steam into the frigid morning air. A low mist clung to the water, thick enough to blur the horizon, thin enough to part under movement. It didn't take long to find the Orcas. 6 fins cut through the surface in a staggered formation familiar, unmistakable. The big male at the front, 2 adult females just behind him. The 3 juveniles forming a triangular pattern further back, but the formation was tighter today. More focused, more controlled. And as they drew closer, Erin saw why. They were pushing a carcass. Her pulse quickened. A shark. Not the same species as the ones from the original attack. This one was smaller, with a narrower head and a more tapered body, likely a female salmon shark. But the way the Orcas behaved around it was chillingly deliberate. The big male kept nudging the carcass forward with short, precise movements. One female flanked the right side, another the left, adjusting whenever the carcass veered offline. The juveniles followed behind, but did not touch it. They watched, studied, learned. "This isn't feeding," Erin said quietly. "This is teaching." But the act was darker this time, more aggressive, more final. The adult Orcas were showing the juveniles how to disable a shark, how to neutralize a potential threat. how to control a predator smaller than themselves. It wasn't empathy. It wasn't rescue. It was enforcement. A message written in movement rather than sound. Luis, standing beside her, muttered, "It's like they're running war drills." Erin didn't answer. She felt something twist inside her: respect, unease, awe, fear. A recognition that intelligence doesn't always present itself in soft, comforting forms. Sometimes it was sharp, strategic, capable of violence when necessary. The Orcas continued pushing the shark carcass until they reached deeper water. Then, as if on cue, the big male released it and the adults peeled away. The juveniles lingered for an extra moment, circling the carcass in slow, deliberate arcs before following the adults. Erin watched them disappear into the mist. "What do you think that was?" Someone on her team asked. "A lesson," she whispered. "But a lesson for whom? For the young Orcas learning how to claim and defend territory? Or for the sharks? Or for the whales? Or for the humans who kept trying to simplify what they were seeing?" In February, the story took another turn. A dead gray whale washed up on a long stretch of pebble beach north of La Push. Erosion had eaten away part of the coastal bluffs there, leaving exposed sandstone cliffs and turbulent surf. The whale was discovered by hikers and reported to the Marine Mammal Stranding Network, who then contacted the Institute. Erin arrived with 2 colleagues and a field kit, expecting a routine necropsy. Winter strandings were common, especially during migration season. Orcas preyed on gray whale calves frequently, and seniors often died of starvation. But when Erin approached the carcass, her breath hitched. Not at the cause of death, that was obvious. The whale had been attacked by transient Orcas. Deep rake marks striped its flanks. Tissue had been torn from the tongue and lower jaw. No, what made her freeze was something else. Something carved into the sand beside the carcass. Tracks, large tracks. 6 sets, not footprints. Fin drag patterns. Orca fin drag patterns. She knelt down, brushing her glove across the sand. Long grooves. Deep impressions where the surf had pushed water around large bodies. Marks from dorsal fins rising, submerging, rising again. The whales had come close to the beach. Very close. Too close. Transients rarely beach themselves during hunts unless pursuing pinnipeds near shore. To approach a gray whale carcass at that angle meant the pod had been moving in water shallow enough to scrape their fins along the bottom. Risky behavior. Behavior that indicated 2 possibilities. Either the whales were desperate for food unlikely, or they were sending a signal. She stood and scanned the coastline. The surf was rough but not dangerous. Kelp rocked in the waves. Gulls circled overhead. The tracks were unmistakable. They brought the kill as close to shore as they could, Erin said quietly. Luis frowned. Why would they do that? Erin's voice was almost a whisper. To show someone. Show who? She exhaled shakily. You? Sss. He stared at her like she'd gone soft in the head. Erin, come on. But she wasn't guessing. She was connecting patterns, behavior, trajectory, timing. The same pod that had rescued a humpback. The same pod that had escorted another. The same pod that had demonstrated shark-neutralizing techniques. The same pod that had performed increasingly visible and increasingly deliberate actions near human boats. They had brought this whale close enough to shore that any person walking the beach would see the kill marks, the tracks, the evidence. But why? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. March came with a stretch of rare winter sunlight, the kind that casts everything in cold gold and makes the surface of the water look like hammered metal. The research teams used the clear weather to deploy additional hydrophones along known Orca travel routes. Erin listened to hours of audio clicks, whistles, low-frequency pulses. But one night, around 2 a.m., she heard something different. Something she'd never heard in years of analysis. A pattern sequence. Not random, not communication between pod members, not hunting calls. A repeated sequence of clicks and whistles with structured spacing and frequency drops. A consistent, looping pattern. She replayed it. Again. 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 A chill crept up her spine. It wasn't a signature call. It wasn't sonar. It was something else. A broadcast, almost like a beacon, almost like a warning. She sat back, overwhelmed with exhaustion and certainty. They were marking territory, not physically, acoustically. A soft territorial claim, one that whales and sharks would understand, but humans almost certainly would not, except she did. Because she'd been there the morning, the Orcas intervened. Because she'd watched them teach the juveniles. Because she'd watched them patrol the edges of the deeper trench. Because she'd seen them display dead sharks and nearshore kills. They were drawing lines. Invisible lines humans weren't meant to disturb. A marine cultural expansion rare, powerful, and potentially volatile. The pod was making decisions. The kind that could reshape local predator dynamics. The kind that could shift migration patterns. The kind that could impact fisheries, shark populations, and even human safety. And the world had no framework for it. By April, the Institute's formal report was complete. Peer-reviewed, approved, published. It included footage from the Kestrel, hydrophone analysis, behavioral models, and expert commentary from multiple international institutions. The conclusions were measured but groundbreaking. Behavior consistent with protective intervention and intergenerational teaching observed between transient orcas and an injured humpback whale. The scientific world erupted. Some hailed it as evidence of advanced marine empathy. Others denounced the term entirely. Some insisted it was adaptive strategy. Others argued for predator deterrence. Some claimed it was the first recorded case of interspecies guardianship. Others insisted humans were projecting human morality onto animals. Arguments filled journals, conferences, op-eds, podcasts. Everyone wanted the story. Erin wanted something else. Context, understanding. Enough time in the field to know what these whales were trying to communicate by shifting their behaviors so dramatically. She returned to the water as often as possible. Sometimes she found the pod. Sometimes she didn't. Sometimes she followed their tracks through kelp-lined bays. Sometimes she found only silence. But the ocean never let her forget them. One morning in mid-May, she woke before sunrise and walked down to the docks with a travel mug of coffee and a restlessness she couldn't shake. Fog clung low across the harbor. The air smelled like cold salt and cedar. A gull shrieked overhead. She stood there, listening, not expecting anything, but hearing everything. Then, faintly, far out in the still gray distance, she saw it. A tall fin, then another, then more. The pod. They moved slowly into the bay, not hunting, not traveling, not chasing anything, just arriving. Erin froze. The big male surfaced first, his dorsal fin rising like a dark monolith through the mist. The two adult females followed, their sleek bodies slicing the water in practiced rhythm. The juveniles trailed behind, but more confidently now, their movements assured. The whales stopped just outside the harbor mouth, waiting. Erin felt her breath catch. "You came back," she whispered, though there was no one around to hear her. The big male dipped beneath the surface, then rose again slightly closer, not threatening, not demanding, just present, aware, connected, the same way he had been the day he supported the bleeding humpback, the day he guarded Wyatt Dalton's fishing boat, the day he pushed a shark carcass across the water like a drifting cymbal. Erin stepped to the edge of the dock. "You're teaching us something," she murmured. "Aren't you?" The whales held their positions. Then, slowly, the big male turned south. The others followed. Within minutes, they were gone. The bay smoothed. The fog drifted. Erin stood alone with the feeling that the world was shifting under her feet. And the final piece of the story, that last, haunting truth, came not from the water, but from the land. 2 weeks later, a hiker found a dead shark on a remote beach south of the bay. A large female mako, perfectly intact, except for one thing. Both gills had been removed with surgical precision, an orca technique documented in only a handful of rare cases. Left behind, unconsumed, positioned at the high tide line, facing the water. The message, if it was a message, was unmistakable. The rules are changing. Pay attention. Erin stood over the shark carcass, the wind tugging strands of hair across her face, and felt both awe and dread settle inside her. Orcas had always been intelligent, always been social, always been capable of astonishing behavior. But now they were doing something else. They were making choices humans could see, choices humans would have to respond to, choices humans could no longer ignore. She crouched beside the shark and placed a hand on the sand, feeling the vibration of distant waves traveling through the ground. If the orcas were protecting whales, teaching young, and patrolling territory, if they were neutralizing sharks, escorting vulnerable individuals, and showing complex cross-species behavior, if they were adapting their culture in real time, then the next phase wouldn't belong to science alone. It would belong to the ocean. And the ocean was asking a question, not softly, but clearly. Are you paying attention? Erin stood slowly, looking out across the endless gray water. She thought about the humpback that survived, the sharks that didn't, the whales that learned, the humans who watched, the currents shifting beneath everything. And she understood something with a clarity that left her breathless. The orcas hadn't just saved a whale. They had issued a warning one the natural world had been whispering for decades. Protect what matters, before it disappears, before something stronger decides to do it for you. She turned toward the horizon, the sky beginning to glow with the first pale streaks of dawn. This story isn't about us, she said softly, but it's ours now. If this story stayed with you, if it made you see the ocean with new eyes, remember to like and subscribe. There are more real mysteries out there, waiting beneath the waves, whether we're ready for them or not.